This is TWiT.
Samsung Galaxy Note 4. I've never bothered to use the N Pen in a Galaxy Note 4 other than like, yes, it works, and then I walked away from it. What did you think, man?
So I had never used a phone with this type of screen size before. Have you?
Sure. I did. It was funny. I was using an iPhone 4S, used a Galaxy Note 2, and then went back to the iPhone 4S and started hunting for my replacement for the iPhone 4S because the iPhone 4S suddenly seemed so small. This is your first phablet experience.
It is, and I found myself kind of surprisingly into it, right? Like I found use for it immediately. Like anytime you're reading an article on a website on your phone or looking at pictures or something like that, or even like taking pictures with it because it's such a big viewfinder and it also has a pretty nice camera on it as well.
Right.
I found it to be pretty impressive, actually. And the like a lot of people complain about TouchWiz, and there's a lot of reasons to complain about TouchWiz, the kind of Samsung overlay for Android. But like the ability to do side-by-side multitasking is not something that I think a lot of people are going to do, but it was interesting contextually, like to be able to watch a video on YouTube while looking through the Twitter feed on the other side of the screen. It's just kind of barely big enough to make that useful. Not perfect, but useful. The S Pen on it, the stylus, I actually did like quite a bit. It was useful. Say I went to a car show while Kelly was homesick and we're trying to find a new car for her. And I took pictures of the different SUVs that I thought she would like. And then I would write notes on the picture, like circling things that I didn't like, or, hey, the third row seat was really cramped in headroom space or whatever. And you could do that on there. And I found more uses for it than I thought. And it became less of a bulky brick in my hand the more, you know, the more days I kind of utilized it. So I came away.
After a couple weeks, you're like, hey, you don't even notice the fact that you're basically holding a dinner tray next to your head. It's just your phone at that point.
And because it's bigger, it has more. It has better room for camera optics. It has better room for a larger battery. You get weird, like the Note 4 specifically has weird support for VR technology, like the Galaxy Gear VR, which I got to try out with it. I don't have it anymore. Otherwise, it was fun. And what I learned from this is that virtual reality should be untethered. It should be wireless. Having cables attached to you kind of ruins everything. And this is a neat little $199 toy if you already have 4, but don't buy a Note 4 specifically to get that. So, you know, if you want to read what my thoughts are in terms of performance and usability, just go to pcper.com and read the review. We don't need to talk about it necessarily anymore here. I just, as a first-time user of a device with a screen that size, you know, iPhone 6 size, Galaxy Note size, what else is there? I think the Nexus 6 is like that as well, essentially. So I could be convinced to go to that as a full-time phone from my Motorola Droid or Droid Turbo that seems small now in comparison. But
I got to say my one complaint about Samsung's implementation of Android, the hardware is fantastic. Whether you're talking about tablets or phones, small phones or large phones, phablets, they junk up Android with more stuff. Like their interface drives me insane. Especially that's what was going from like a Samsung device to first the Moto G and then later on the Moto E, which by the way is I've decided is an amazing deal for 120, $150. It is amazing how much stuff Samsung layers on top of Android, which I'd really like them to give me a really easy way to eliminate all of that so I can have a pure Android experience on their hardware.
I will point out, I think that you can now get it Verizon for $99 off contract.
Oh, wow.